What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actresses finds herself face to face with a host who refuses to back down from the most controversial question of her career? The answer will shock you, and by the end of this video, you'll understand why Helen Mirren made a decision that left an entire studio speechless. Make sure to subscribe and drop a comment below, because this story gets more intense with every single word. It started like any other Tuesday morning interview. Helen Mirren sat across from morning show host Rebecca Chen, the studio lights casting their usual warm glow across the familiar set. The interview had been going smoothly, covering her latest film project and her thoughts on the current state of cinema. But then, something shifted in the air, something that would turn a routine promotional appearance into television history. "Helen, I have to ask you about something that our viewers have been discussing quite extensively on social media," Rebecca said, her tone taking on a more serious edge. "There's been a lot of conversation about your comments from that interview 3 weeks ago, where you seemed to suggest that younger actresses today lack the dedication that your generation had." Helen's posture straightened slightly, her eyes narrowing just a fraction. "I'm sorry, but I think you're mischaracterizing what I said entirely. I was speaking about the craft, about the years of training and theater work that used to be considered essential before anyone even thought about film roles. But the way you phrased it, Helen, many people interpreted it as dismissive of today's young talent. Some have even called it gatekeeping," Rebecca pressed, leaning forward slightly. "Don't you think that's a fair assessment?" The atmosphere in the studio began to change. Helen's smile, which had been warm and genuine moments before, became more measured, more controlled. "I think what's unfair is twisting someone's words to create controversy where none existed. I've spent 50 years in this industry, and I've seen how it's evolved. That gives me a perspective that I'm entitled to share. Of course, you're entitled to your perspective, but when you have the platform, you do. Don't you think there's a responsibility to consider how those words might affect young women trying to break into the industry?" Rebecca's voice remained calm, but there was an unmistakable challenge in her question. Helen paused, her fingers tightening slightly on the arm of her chair. "Are you suggesting I should censor myself to avoid hurting feelings? Because if that's the direction this conversation is heading, I think we might need to reconsider what journalism actually means." "I'm not suggesting censorship at all. I'm asking about accountability. When someone with your influence makes statements that could discourage young talent, isn't there value in examining that impact?" Rebecca didn't back down, her journalist instincts clearly taking over. The tension was becoming palpable now. Camera operators exchanged glances, and somewhere in the control room, producers were undoubtedly having rapid-fire discussions about where this was all heading. "Accountability," Helen repeated, her voice taking on a cooler tone. "Let me tell you about accountability, Rebecca. Accountability is spending years honing your craft in repertory theater, working for practically nothing, learning every aspect of performance before you ever step in front of a camera. Accountability is not expecting the industry to change its standards to accommodate your timeline. But Helen, times have changed. The industry has changed. Social media, streaming platforms, the whole landscape is different now. Shouldn't we acknowledge that the path to success might look different today?" Rebecca countered. "Different? Yes. Easier? No. And that seems to be what many people want to hear. That somehow the work itself has become optional. That talent alone is enough without the years of dedication and study that turn talent into skill." Helen's voice was rising slightly, her composure beginning to show cracks. The interview was clearly going off script now. Rebecca glanced briefly at her notes, but it was clear she was operating on instinct. "Helen, I don't think anyone is arguing that hard work isn't important, but when you dismiss entire platforms and methods that young actors use today to build their careers, isn't that somewhat short-sighted?" "Short-sighted?" Helen's eyebrows shot up. "Rebecca, I've been acting since before you were born. I've seen trends come and go. I've watched the industry change in ways both wonderful and concerning. What I find short-sighted is assuming that because something is new, it's automatically better, or that because something is traditional, it's automatically obsolete." The host shifted in her chair, clearly not expecting this level of pushback. "I'm not making assumptions about better or worse, Helen. I'm simply suggesting that dismissing new pathways might not be the most productive approach. And I'm suggesting that perhaps this interview should focus on the film I'm here to discuss, rather than trying to turn me into some sort of villain for having an opinion based on 5 decades of experience," Helen replied, her voice now carrying an unmistakable edge of irritation. Rebecca paused, clearly weighing her next words carefully. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity in television time. Maybe 3 or 4 seconds that felt like minutes to everyone watching. Rebecca finally broke that loaded silence. But instead of backing down, she doubled down. Helen, I understand you're here to promote your film, and we will absolutely get to that. But this conversation we're having right now, this is exactly what our viewers want to hear. Real talk about real issues in the industry. Helen's laugh was sharp, almost bitter. Real talk. Is that what we're calling it when a host ambushes a guest with a predetermined agenda? Because that's what this feels like. Rebecca, you invited me here under the pretense of discussing my work, and instead, you're trying to paint me as some sort of out-of-touch dinosaur. That's not what I'm trying to do at all, Rebecca protested. But Helen was already shaking her head. No, that's exactly what you're doing. You've taken comments I made about the value of classical training and somehow twisted them into an attack on young actors. That's not journalism, Rebecca. That's manipulation, for the sake of creating content. The accusation hung in the air like a challenge. Rebecca's professional composure wavered for just a moment before she regrouped. Helen, I have to push back on that. The questions I'm asking are based on genuine concerns raised by people in the industry, including young actresses who felt discouraged by your statements. Which young actresses? Helen demanded, leaning forward. Now her voice gaining intensity. Name them. If you're going to use their supposed hurt feelings as ammunition against me, then name them. Let's have that conversation honestly. Rebecca hesitated, and that hesitation was everything. I can't reveal sources. Helen, you know that. Sources? Helen's voice pitched higher with incredulity. Sources for what exactly? For being offended, for having their feelings hurt by the suggestion that training and experience matter? These mysterious actresses are your sources now? Helen, you're being deliberately obtuse. You know very well that your platform carries weight. And when you make broad statements about entire generations of performers, it has an impact. And you know very well that taking someone's words out of context and then demanding they defend interpretations they never intended is exactly the kind of gotcha journalism that's destroying meaningful discourse in this industry. Helen's words came faster now, her British accent becoming more pronounced as her frustration mounted. Rebecca straightened, her own professional pride clearly stung. I resent the implication that this is gotcha journalism. I'm asking legitimate questions about statements you made publicly. Legitimate questions. Helen laughed again, and this time it was genuinely incredulous. Rebecca, you started this line of questioning by telling me that people on social media were discussing my comments. Social media. That's your barometer for legitimate journalism now? Anonymous posts? And social media is where conversations happen now, Helen. It's where the public engages with these issues. Ignoring that would be irresponsible. And elevating it to the level of serious discourse is what exactly? Progressive? Because I'd call it lazy. The words came out sharper than Helen had perhaps intended, and the temperature in the studio seemed to drop several degrees. Rebecca's cheeks flushed slightly, but her voice remained steady. I don't think there's anything lazy about listening to the voices of people who might not have had platforms before. And I don't think there's anything progressive about treating every opinion as equally valid, regardless of experience, context, or even basic accuracy. Helen was fully animated now, her hands moving as she spoke. When did we decide that having a Twitter account made someone an expert on the acting profession? When did we decide that having been around longer automatically made someone right? Rebecca fired back, and for the first time her professional mask slipped completely. The question landed like a physical blow. Helen went completely still, her eyes fixed on Rebecca with an intensity that was almost frightening. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, controlled, and absolutely furious. Are you seriously asking me when experience became valuable? When dedication became worth something? When the years I've spent mastering my craft earned me the right to have an opinion about that craft? Rebecca realized she had crossed a line, but it was too late to take it back. Helen, I didn't mean to suggest that your experience doesn't matter. Yes, you did. That's exactly what you meant to suggest, because that's the narrative you walked into this interview planning to create. The old guard trying to hold back progress, the established star who's lost touch with the modern world. Isn't that right? Helen's voice was gaining volume now, and everyone in the studio could feel the energy shifting. That's not true, Helen. Then what is true, Rebecca? What exactly are you trying to accomplish here? Because if it's making me look foolish, you're failing. If it's making yourself look like a serious journalist, you're failing even more spectacularly. The insult was direct and unmistakable. Rebecca's face went pale, then red. Helen, I think we need to take a step back here. Why? Because you're not getting the responses you wanted? Because I'm not playing along with your little game? Helen was standing now, though neither of them seemed to realize when that had happened. Rebecca remained seated, but her voice took on a defensive edge. Helen, I'm doing my job. I'm asking the questions that need to be asked. Your job. Helen's voice was incredulous. Your job is to ambush guests with gotcha questions based on social media outrage. Your job is to twist people's words and then act surprised when they defend themselves. Because if that's what passes for journalism now, then this industry is in worse shape than I thought. I'm not twisting anything, Helen. I'm quoting you directly. No, you're not. You're quoting other people's interpretations of what I said and then presenting those interpretations as if they were my actual words. There's a difference, Rebecca. Though apparently that distinction is lost on your generation of journalists. The phrase hit like a slap. Rebecca stood up now, too, her own anger finally breaking through completely. My generation? Really, Helen, you're going to go there? I'm going wherever this conversation takes us, because you're the one who decided to make this personal. Helen's voice was steel now. You're the one who decided that my decades of experience were somehow a liability, that my perspective was inherently invalid because it doesn't align with whatever trending hashtag you found compelling this week. That is not what I said, and you know it. It's exactly what you implied, and we both know it. You walked into this interview with an agenda, Rebecca. You had your angle decided before I ever sat down, didn't you? The out-of-touch actress putting down the next generation, the perfect little controversy to boost your ratings. Rebecca's composure cracked completely. You think this is about ratings? You think I enjoy having these conversations? You think I wanted this to go this way? I think you wanted exactly this. Actually, I think you wanted me to get defensive so you could paint me as difficult. I think you wanted me to push back so you could show your viewers how unreasonable I am. The only problem is, I'm not playing by your script. There is no script, Helen. These are legitimate concerns from legitimate people in the industry. Name one. Name one person who actually said they were hurt by my comments. One person who isn't hiding behind anonymity or social media handles. One person willing to put their name to this supposed outrage. Rebecca faltered again, and Helen pounced on the hesitation. You can't, can you? Because they don't exist. Not in the way you're presenting them. What exists are click-hungry websites looking for content, and apparently, journalists willing to manufacture controversy to feed them. I am not manufacturing anything, Helen. I am responding to real conversations happening in real time about real issues. Real issues. Helen's laugh was bitter now. The real issue, Rebecca, is that we've created a culture where experience is treated as suspicious, where expertise is seen as elitism, where having an opinion based on decades of work is somehow problematic because it might make someone feel bad about their own choices. That's not what this is about. It's exactly what this is about. You've decided that my perspective is invalid, not because it's wrong, but because it might discourage someone. Well, let me tell you something about discouragement, Rebecca. Part of life, it's part of growth. And coddling people by pretending that all paths are equally valid, that all opinions carry equal weight, that experience doesn't matter. That's not kindness. That's patronizing condescension disguised as progressiveness. Rebecca was visibly angry now, her professional training warring with her personal feelings. So, young actors should just accept that they don't matter, that their struggles aren't valid. Young actors should accept that they have things to learn, just like I did when I was young, just like every actor who ever lived had to accept. The difference is we didn't expect the world to validate our feelings every step of the way. The EP world has changed. Helen, yes, it has. And not all of those changes are improvements. Some of them are steps backward disguised as progress. Helen's voice was rising again. And when someone points that out, when someone suggests that maybe we've gone too far in certain directions, they get ambushed in interviews by people who've decided that experience is a dirty word. I never said experience was a dirty word. You didn't have to say it, Rebecca. You've been communicating it clearly from the moment you started this line of questioning. My experience, my perspective, my 5 decades in this business. None of that matters if it conflicts with what 20-year-olds on Twitter think about the industry. That's not fair, Helen. Fair. Helen's voice cracked with incredulous laughter. You want to talk about fair? What's fair about twisting someone's words and then demanding they defend positions they never took? What's fair about using your platform to attack a guest who came here in good faith? What's fair about prioritizing anonymous social media outrage over actual conversation about craft and artistry? The studio had gone completely silent except for their voices. Even the camera operators had stopped their usual small movements, everyone frozen by the intensity of the exchange. Rebecca took a deep breath, trying to regain her composure. Helen, I think we're both getting too heated here. Maybe we should take a break and come back to the film discussion. No. Helen's voice was firm and final. No, we're not taking a break. We're not resetting. You started this, Rebecca, and now you want to run away when it got uncomfortable. Helen's refusal to back down left Rebecca scrambling. Helen, I'm trying to be professional here. Professional. Helen's voice dripped with disdain. You ambush me with manufactured controversy and then hide behind professionalism when I refuse to play along. That's not professional, Rebecca. That's cowardly. I am not being cowardly. I'm trying to salvage an interview that's gotten completely out of hand. An interview that you deliberately drove off the rails the moment you decided to make me the villain in your little morality play. Helen was pacing now, her energy crackling through the studio. You know what's truly unprofessional? Bringing someone on your show under false pretenses, pretending you want to discuss their work while actually planning to ambush them with social media drama. Rebecca's face was flushed, her voice rising to match Helen's intensity. I did not bring you here under false pretenses. These are legitimate questions about your public statements. Stop hiding behind that word legitimate. There's nothing legitimate about taking someone's thoughtful comments about craft and training and turning them into an attack on young people. There's nothing legitimate about using anonymous social media posts as the foundation for serious journalism. Social media is part of the conversation now, Helen. It's where people express their concerns. It's where people go to be outraged about things they didn't bother to understand in the first place. Helen stopped pacing and fixed Rebecca with a stare that could have cut glass. And apparently it's where journalists go to find easy content instead of doing actual research. The accusation hit its mark. Rebecca's professionalism finally shattered completely. You know what, Helen? Maybe the problem isn't with my generation of journalists. Maybe the problem is with your generation of actors who think they're above being questioned. The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Helen went completely still, her face transforming from anger to something far more dangerous. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, controlled, and absolutely lethal. Above being questioned, above being questioned. She laughed, but there was no humor in it whatsoever. Rebecca, I've been questioned by journalists who actually knew how to do their jobs. I've been interviewed by people who understood the difference between challenging someone and attacking them. I've sat across from hosts who could disagree with me without resorting to character assassination. I haven't attacked your character, Helen. You've done nothing but attack my character. You've implied I'm out of touch, that my experience is worthless, that my perspective is harmful, that I'm somehow holding back progress. And now you're suggesting that I think I'm above being questioned after I've spent the last 15 minutes answering every single one of your loaded questions. Rebecca tried to interrupt, but Helen was far from finished. You want to know what I think I'm above, Rebecca? I think I'm above being disrespected by someone who clearly has no understanding of what actual journalism looks like. I think I'm above being used as content for whatever social media-driven outrage cycle you're trying to feed. And I think I'm above sitting here and pretending that this ambush disguised as an interview is anything other than exactly what it is. Helen, please. Let's just try to bring this back to a civil conversation. Civil. Helen's voice cracked with incredulous laughter. You want civil now, after you've spent this entire interview trying to make me look like some sort of bitter old woman who hates young people. After you've twisted my words, misrepresented my positions, and used anonymous social media complaints as ammunition against me. Now you want civil. Rebecca was clearly panicking now, realizing how badly this had spiraled. Helen, I never intended for this to become so confrontational. Yes, you did. You absolutely did, because confrontation gets clicks, doesn't it? Drama gets shares, and making me look unreasonable makes you look brave for standing up to the establishment. Helen's voice was building to something that felt like an explosion waiting to happen. That's not true, and you know it. I know exactly what this is, Rebecca. I've been in this industry longer than you've been alive, and I recognize a hit job when I see one. The only miscalculation you made was assuming I'd sit here quietly and let you do it. Rebecca made one last desperate attempt to regain control. Helen, our viewers tune in to hear honest conversations about difficult topics. That's all this is.